2 for Yo Coach B. He is the Brits coach, and from the looks of it, with all the skills toggled on, he is a rookie Brits coach, or a rookie Brits team, facing off against Chaos Dwarves with one mighty blow, so mostly rookie. The first thing I want to take a look at is going to be Yo Coach B's setup. So he is receiving, and the first thing you want to do is have a plan when setting up your team for your ideal turn 1. As you can see, here is the LOS, the line of scrimmage, and you can see how the Chaos Dwarves have set up in a defense known as the Rule of 5. It's known as Rule of 5 because he is protecting 5 players while exposing the other 6 to a potential hit or blitz. He put his Hobgoblins on the line, which in my opinion, this is just an opinion, was a mistake because you don't have any Claw or Mighty Blow, and the Hobgoblins are AV7 as opposed to the more protected blockers who are AV9. So he's giving you a chance to punch 3, maybe even 4 players who are AV7, which leads to a high likelihood of their armor being broken. Additionally, the blockers have the block skill, and these Hobgoblins don't. So not only are these Hobgoblins easier to knock down, to get an armor roll, they're also more likely to succeed that armor roll and potentially get removed off the pitch. Now, when you're looking at a Brett's team, you can see he has 4 blockers. He elected to go start with 3 blitzers and 4 peasants. He did get a reroll on the kickoff, so I believe he starts off with 3 rerolls. Both teams don't have a bench either. So, looking at his setup, the first critique I always have is you should prioritize knocking over these 3 players first, because it's attainable, it's easy to do. For some teams, you have to try to judge or make the decision if you can knock over these three players. This is very much easy to do, as your strength 3, their strength 3, and you can generate the assists to get the 2 dice blocks for potential knockdown. Now what you've done is you've prioritized your blitzers to put them on the far, or 2 of the blitzers to put them on the wings here, outside on the outside zones. You have 1 blitzer here to be a ball carrier, which I like. However, what I would have done, and I believe what most coaches would have done, is utilize these 2 blitzers to either be on the LOS to punch the Hobgoblins, or be set up in a position to where they would blitz either one of these 2 blockers or this Hobgoblin here. Additionally, as you have your 2 blockers here in the backfield, assumably back there to protect the ball, when they have the wrestle skill, I think it's beneficial to have one of these blockers back to potentially protect the ball in case the Chaos Dwarf team has a blitz and they end up flooding your backfield. It's nice to have a wrestler back here to protect you. But why it's important to notate that they have the wrestle skill is that the peasants do not have the wrestle skill. So when the peasants are throwing a block against these Hobgoblins, or against anybody, and it's a 2 dice block, there is a 1 in 9 opportunities for them to roll either 2 skulls or 2 both downs, or a combination of the 2, which would lead to a turnover if that was the final result of the block. And it would result in the peasant getting knocked down and having an armor roll rolled against them. And as I mentioned, armor 7 gives you a reasonably high probability of having that armor broken and potentially removed off the pitch. So anytime you're throwing a 2 dice block with a peasant, there is that inherent risk involved. Whereas with the blocker, if there's a both down result on a dice, he can elect to take this wrestle, and can, at that point, it will not result in a turnover. It will result in the player falling to the ground, but it won't be a turnover, so there's less inherent risk. So what I would have liked to have seen is setting your LOS up where you can get 1, 2, 3, 4 hits on his players, and I would want all the players with either the block or wrestle skill to be making those hits. So let's see what Yo Coach B does. He put his 2 blitzers on the wings so he can send them down to be an immediate scoring threat. Let's take a step back here and think about the overall larger strategy to trying to win a Blood Bowl match. The overall larger strategy to winning the Blood Bowl match, at its very basics, is to outscore your opponents. I think that's easy to realize. What Yo Coach B and his Brett's team have done is have elected to, just from sending his 2 blitzers as far down the field as he can, is he's telling me that he's trying to score as soon as possible. Inherently, I think I guess intuitively it makes sense to try to score as soon as possible. You're trying to outscore your opponent. However, in Blood Bowl, one item to note is scoring as soon as possible is not necessarily a benefit to you or your team. When looking at the larger scope of the picture, why scoring as soon as possible may not be beneficial to you and your team is, let's say you have the opportunity to score in 2 turns. Well, then you give your opponent 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 turns to return score on you. If your opponent takes 6 turns and scores on turn 8, then that leaves you no opportunity to score back in this half. The next half, he will kick the ball to your opponent, and he will get the ball again, and he will try to achieve to score on turn 16 of the second half and win 2-1 total, leaving you with no more turns to try to equalize. That is known as the 2-1 grind. It can be beneficial to try to score as soon as possible if you believe your team has the defensive skills to easily remove the ball from your opponent. As a rookie Brett's team, it is my opinion that your team does not have those skills to easily remove the ball off your opponent. Therefore, I would have elected for the overall larger strategy to try to score on turn 8 of this drive, leaving my opponent the least amount of time as possible to equalize in this half. That gives me the greatest opportunity to 1 win and to 2 draw if need be. Next up is looking at his initial plan for Yo Coach B. He makes his block with the blocker, which is good. Makes his second block with the blocker, which is good. And now he's starting to throw blocks with his peasants, which are risky. I would have inherited, instead of having these 2 blockers back, or these 2 blitzers up, I would have liked to have seen those players on the line of scrimmage throwing these blocks instead. Also, Yo Coach B, with his setup, has prevented himself from having enough resources to throw a blitz. Because of that, he leaves an opportunity to knock down another player on the Chaos Dwarf team. I believe for your first turn, with the way that the team was set up, and the team that you have, you should have maximized the amount of blocks that you were given, and therefore set up to where you have an assist on either one of these 2 Chaos Dwarf pieces, or the Hobgoblin, and thrown a blitz to try to knock down one of these players. You always have the opportunity to knock down that individual and also break their armor and potentially remove them from the pitch, therefore making your drive more likely to be successful. So the first thing the Chaos Dwarf team does, or coach, is begin to play some tackle zones onto your scoring threats. He picks up his Hobgoblin and bases them against your team, which is what I believe to be a good thing for you, because it allows you to throw additional blocks against these players next turn. So he is going a full-fledged basing of these 4 players. He's keeping his Bull Centaur back for a potential safety. And he's keeping his Mighty Blow to be a blitzer to hit this peasant. Gets the knockdown. Immediate injury and removal. You see, rolled a 10, so the Mighty Blow did not come into effect for the armor roll. However, Mighty Blow did affect the injury, causing a 10 overall, and ultimately removing your peasant from the field. So now you are down 11 players, or 10 players to 11. You do a good job of providing an assist for these 2 blocks. However, for this last block, it is now a 1-die block, because you have 1 assist for blitzing or hitting this goblin, but you also have 1 assist against. Throw the 1-die block immediately, and that is inherently risky. There is a skull on the dice, leading to a 1 in 6 opportunity that was going to be a skull. Early in your turn, especially with the ball not 100% protected, I would have elected to try to generate a 2-die block somewhere else instead. Could you have gotten a 2-dice block on this Hobgoblin? Well, one is you could have canceled this assist against by placing one of your players in this Chaos Dwarf's tackle zone. However, one idea is you could have blitzed this Chaos Dwarf at the end of his line here. One way you could have done that is set one of your blockers as an assist against, use this blocker to come through, and blitz this blocker, the Chaos Dwarf blocker, for a 2-dice block, and that would have allowed you to cancel his assist, get a 2-dice block on this Dwarf blocker, and also get a 2-die block on this Hobgoblin, which is a lot safer than the 1-die searching through. Turns out that you got the POW on 5+, which is lucky, and it's good to see. So you ended up placing this player in there anyways, where if you would have placed this blocker to cancel the assist before you threw that, that would have been a 2-dice block. So try to get as many 2-dice blocks as possible. So you ended up placing the players where I would have placed them anyways, yet you didn't maximize the blocks that you were going to get. And now you see you trying to dodge out your player because your initial plan was a bit foiled. You end up having to use a team reroll to free up your blitzer, and you were able to make a blitz and get a knockdown, which is fortunate. Now you have to dodge this other player from this dwarf, or this Chaos Dwarf. It fails, and you have another potential armor roll against your player, which could have led to a removal. So once again, we go back to see your setup, and it being unoptimized has hurt your preceding turns. So once again, we see this Chaos Dwarf coach giving you extra blocks on the next turn. However, he is also saying he is trying to shut down the right side by allocating a lot of players to your right side. He does make another blitz on a peasant, knocks him down, breaks his armor, and gets a stun. There's a 1 dice block to push your player off. Let's see what I would potentially do if I was in your situation. So, looking at this here, you have 1, 2, 3 Chaos Dwarf players that are based up against your players that you're able to throw blocks against. And you also have a blitz, so you have the opportunity to knock down 4 opposing players this turn. So how would you do that? First off, because you can't get an assist onto this player to get a 2 die from your blitzer here, I would prioritize trying to knock over this Mighty Blow blocker first. So how would I do that? I would most likely put this peasant here in this square to give an assist from this blocker to hit this Chaos Dwarf. On the result of the 2 die block, if it's a push at all, or even a POW, that allows me to have another additional 2 dice block on this goblin. If I POW, so either roll a 5 or 6 on the 2 dice block on this blocker, I can bring in another assist into this square and get a 2 dice block on this blocker. So that allows me to do 1, 2, 3 blocks. And then I can bring an assist and have this other blocker come through and punch this hobgoblin here. So all my players will be centralized. I would have gotten a chance to hit 4 players, and at the very end, I would have probably tried to dodge out and bring this player closer to my other players to help out with blocking and assisting for future drives. And then centralize the ball, as I'm in no hurry to advance the ball, as I still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 turns after turn 3 to move the ball forward up the field. Let's see what Yo Coach B does. So the ball is protected, which is good to see. And he gets his 2 dice on this blocker as well, which is great. Which is exactly what I was going to do. Frees him up to do 2 dice here. Rolls a 1 and 9, which is unfortunate. Has to use a second tomb reroll, but at least gets a push on the next one. Now, I think it's a bit risky to go ahead and try this dodge first, while your player is in base contact with this Chaos Dwarf down here. If you would have failed that dodge, which is 33% chance to do so, it would have allowed your opponent to get a free hit against one of your most important players. So I would have either, if I wasn't able to generate a 2 dice block on this guy, I would have probably either attempted the 1 dice block or the dodge out before I proceeded to dodge out this player who was prone. So now we see the Chaos Dwarf coach trying to shut down your left side. Also, because you didn't do anything with this blitzer, you gave him a free 2 dice block against one of your most important players. Definitely should have tried to disengage however you could. So we see another blitz and another knockdown on one of your blockers. And another 2 dice block. Thankfully does not get the knockdown. So here we are, turn 4. When you're looking at how you're going to advance the ball, you should look to see if your opponent is favoring one side of the field to the other. As you can see, if we were to draw a line kind of down the middle of the field here, your opponent, the majority of his players, including his main safety, the strength 4 pool, is on the left side here. So what I would do if I was Coach B is try to swing my players, my available players, back to the right here. So how to do that? Stand with the peasant. I think that's fine. Be aware that he is most likely going to get punched next turn, but it does occupy one of these players who are on the left in action for him to punch him. Next up is you have a choice to hit one of these three players if you're moving to the right. I personally would try to punch one of the two hobgoblins here, probably this one in the middle here, as he is AV7, and he doesn't have any skills to protect him from getting punched, or defensive skills, so he doesn't have wrestle and he doesn't have block. So it would have been easy to pick a player up, provide an assist, use the splitzer to blitz him off, and reset up my players on the right side of the field here. Let's see what Coach B does. So Coach B elects to do a handoff play to his blitzer on the far right. I agree with him going to the right. However, that is an inherently risky play. One is, yes, your blitzer has a catch skill, but he's only agility 3, so there is a 1 in 9 opportunity for him to fail that catch, and the ball is on the ground and a turnover, giving your opponent a chance to catch back up and potentially grab the ball himself. So he blitzes with the ball carrier, just gets a push, and decides to come back. So the ball is fairly protected well here, but not a lot of progress was made. And ultimately, with the plan I would have had is you would have had one player based up against your opponent. You now have 4 players based up against your opponent, allowing potentially up to 3 blocks against, including 3 peasants who have 87 and don't have any defense skills, who, as you've seen, you've already had 1 peasant removed and another one have his armor broken to a stun. So here is the Dwarf Coach, Chaos Dwarf Coach, bringing his safety to face his blitzer, and he's going to blitz the safety threat with Mighty Blow, or your scoring threat, excuse me. And breaks armor naturally, and the stun, Mighty Blow, didn't affect into a removal. So we do have 1 peasant getting hit here, which is probably inevitable, as he was based on the ground in the next turn. And now you're seeing some free 2 dice blocks you've given your opponent. He gets a pound. And you see a stun. So because you put this player up against this hobgoblin, and you engaged your opponent, you have left him, one of your peasants, stunned after the knockdown. So, what would I do if I was Coach B in this situation? Well, your opponent definitely has the advantage here of having 1 player up. And going into this turn, you have 2 players who are on the ground stunned. So you only have 8 active players to use against his 11. So if we see once again, we draw a line down the middle of his half, he was able to reposition his players fairly effectively on the right side. And that's where your players are at. Now what you can do is look for holes in the defense to advance your players up the field. As you have 4 turns to score, you still have a little bit of time, but it is starting to get pressing to move the ball up the field. So how can you move the ball up the field? Well, first is he gave you a free 2 dice block against this blocker right here. You could throw a 2 dice block to see if you knock him down. If you knock this player down, then that leaves these 2 hobgoblins in your way that are preventing you from moving forward. If you can knock down this blocker, let's say you push him to the square after the knockdown, you could then set an assist, cancel this assist, and do a 2 dice blitz against this hobgoblin for a potential knockdown. On even a push, you then have an opening to move your players up the field. Now you don't have a lot of room up here to set a full cage, but it would be progress if you're forced to progress up the field. In this case, because you have 2 players stunned, 1 removed, and the ball wouldn't be the safest if you would proceed up here, I would attempt one more turn to try to keep my players back and try to advance next turn. So you have a 2 dice block on this guy, which is fine. You can try to punch him. And you can even try to punch this blocker here, or this hobgoblin up here. And that's what I would have liked to do if this was my turn. So yeah, a very fortunate death on this blocker in that block. Ended up rolling a 12 on the armor, and 10 on the injury, and then a 6 on the casualty. So that itself evened up the numbers for the rest of the game. Now you bring the ball back to a fairly safe position, and even got a knockdown up here. So extremely successful turn. So what you see is your opponent throwing 3 players onto this left side here, all based against your 2 players here. Fortunately, just a push. We do get a mighty blow knockdown on opposing turn, which leads to a knockout and another removal. So now the Chaos Dwarves are backup members. So let's see what Yo Coach B can do to advance the ball up the field. You're now on turn 6. I do believe since you're still at the halfway mark, it is time for you to move up the field the best you can. How can you do that? We can see your opponent is, once again, if you draw a line down the middle of the field, he is very heavily committed to this left side over here, with only 3 blockers to the right of this line. Now he does have his bull, who can move very far down the middle, so he is centralized well. However, this lone blocker is screening by himself. If you can get a knockdown on this blocker with your blitz, that leaves you free reign to come up here and set a fairly safe cage in this area here, and will also allow you to bring your blitzer, who's been practically removed from your entire drive, closer to your players and more involved. Let's see what your Coach B does. So he elects to go after the far right wing blocker over here, which is fair. Might be tougher to swing all your players to this side, however. So the ball is safe, but not a lot of progress was made. opponent has to swing back to the right here. And Chaos Dwarf teams are fairly slow, and elects not even bring this player all the way back at all. Do have a Mighty Blow Blitz, and no knockdown is good for you. Alright, so what would I do if I was Coach B? Since you need to get your players into scoring position this turn, as they won't be able to score on turn 8, it's absolutely essential for you to advance the ball here. You could elect to blitz this Chaos Dwarf blocker here. However, your opponent has done a good job to where even if he is on the ground, you will need to dodge through to advance this way. Really, your only opportunity to advance the ball is going to be down the sidelines here, which means that you're going to have to blitz the bull. Now that's difficult to do because he's strength 4. You can bring 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Nope. So you'd have to bring this blocker in to give an assist. You could bring this blocker in to cancel this Chaos Dwarf's assist, and have this blitzer come through and blitz the bull. Why I say you should use this blitzer is because he has the Dauntless skill, which means whenever he is blocking or blitzing an opponent of higher strength, he gets to roll 1d6 to see if he can match the strength of the player that he's blocking. Since the bull is strength 4, he will need to roll at least a 2 to match the strength of the person he's blocking. So it is a 2+, about 83% chance of success for him to get a 2 dice block on this bull if you have an assist, and cancel this assist here. That'll allow you to potentially knock down the bull. Since the bull does not have any defense skills, it's a 75% chance of knockdown. And that allows you to have the blitzer, another blitzer, and ball carrier to run up the field and potentially sideline cage or screen off your opponent to protect your ball carrier and give you a chance to score. Let's see what Coach B does. Coach B elects to try to block this blocker with no progress. So Coach B was left to having to block this blocker, no progress, and unfortunately does not give him a chance to put someone into scoring range to score next turn. So essentially his opponent has won this drive and has stopped Coach B and his Rebs from scoring. And that's... So that gives Coach B just one turn to finish out his half. So what would I do if I was Coach B? I would prioritize hitting a Hobgoblin like he's doing. This gives an injury, which is very fortunate. But that's why you hit the defensive players or AV7, because it gives you that probability of that happening. Also, I would disengage this peasant from the Mighty Blow blocker, even if it means dodging. He does have 2 rerolls, so he can use the reroll if he does the dodge. he elects for the push, which is actually a higher probability to disengage than the block itself.